Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. Let your arms go heavy, your breath slow. And as you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing what time it is, where you are, and what city or village you're listening from. It's love to know. And if you'd like more quiet stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe so they gently appear when you need them most. Now, let's begin. The first light of morning doesn't belong to you, belongs to the lens. Before you stretch, before you pour coffee, before your phone glows against your palm, the city has already watched you. Not with intent, not with eyes like yours, but with sensors that never slept and software that never forgot. You step outside, and the watching begins again, but you don't notice it because nothing moves. The camera doesn't blink. The pole doesn't hum. The small dome above the corner store round, black, harmless, doesn't turn to follow. It simply is. It has always been. And in that stillness lies something more powerful than any stare. Surveillance used to have a sound. A guard's boots clicking across concrete, the rustle of a notepad, caned whir of a camera adjusting its eye. There was a human behind it, fallible, distractible, sometimes disinterested. Now, the watcher does not sleep. It does not sigh or shift or glance away. It doesn't lose interest. It waits, always. Learning, it watches without watching. And in cities across the U.S., from Denver to Dallas, from Sacramento to Syracuse, that silent presence is spreading. Not like a wave, but like moisture in wood, like roots under pavement, like code behind glass dot. Quiet, gradual, inevitable. You walk down your street thinking about groceries or rent or the next thing in your pocket to check. You cross under a streetlight, unaware that it has a name, or a number, or a microprocessor humming gently behind its glow. It's not just light anymore. It's an access point. It knows when you passed by, what time, what day, what direction, and maybe, depending on the system installed, how tall you are, how quickly you moved. Whether your face resembles someone on a watch list from 3 states away. The camera doesn't judge. The code doesn't feel, but it notices, okay? And noticing is enough. Some of these systems were built for safety, traffic monitoring, accident prevention, public safety during protests, gunshot detection, gambler alerts, and those intentions still live in the documentation. They're printed on the budget proposals, spoken at the town hall meetings. It's tucked into the corners of quarterly city planning reports. But somewhere between intent and installation, the watcher grew. It became curious not in the human sense, but in the computational one. Patterns, statistics, deviation, detection. It wasn't built to understand you, only to recognize when you stop being predictable. Here's the part no one explains. Most of the eyes you pass during the day are not watching you yet, but they could. The infrastructure is in place, okay? And that's enough. It's like a stage set. Before the play, empty, quiet, capable of performance. The smart traffic camera installed for red light enforcement. It's a firmware update away from facial tracking. The public Wi-Fi station near the library. It's a data collector disguised as a convenience. The new LED street lamp. It includes microphones for ambient noise calibration. Hey, and that phrase, ambient noise, now includes arguments, laughter, shouting, footsteps. Sound becomes data, and data becomes meaning, even if it shouldn't. You didn't notice when it began, because no one told you. No one said, today we will install learning cameras on every corner. No one handed you a form to sign. There were no parades, no speeches, no ribbon dash cuttings, just slow expansion. It's one grant-funded pilot program at a time. One city contracts with a tech company. Another adopts a smart public safety network. Then another, and another dot. And soon, the fabric of the city is different. Still gray, still loud, still crowded, but underneath softly hummings, a new kind of awareness. one that does not ask for your name, only your presence. What does it mean to be seen by something that doesn't know you, that doesn't understand context or nuance or tone, that doesn't care if you're rushing because you're late to daycare, or if you're standing still because your shoe came untied to the system? Movement is movement. Pauses are pauses. Deviation is flagged. The human story behind your moment never enters the equation because surveillance is no curiosity-only thresholds. When behavior crosses a line, the system alerts, and what comes next depends on who is listening. In some cities, it's just a ping, a flag in a dashboard, unusual movement at 4:37 a.m. In others, it's an automated suggestion. Send patrol, review footage, cross-reference identity with vehicle plate. And in a few places quietly, controversially, more than suggestion, it's action. A drone launches. A doorbell camera tips off a neighborhood app. A predictive policing system reroutes officers again and again toward the same neighborhoods, not because of crime, because of data, because of past patterns, because of the ghosts of previous movement. You are not a criminal. You are not suspicious. You are not unusual. But the system doesn't know that, because the system doesn't know you. It only knows what it sees, and what it has seen before. And if what it sees matches a stored image, a stored pattern, a stored incident, then you are not you anymore. You are a match, a confidence score, a red flag. And in that moment, your story becomes someone else's data point. Still, the city feels normal. The pigeons scatter the same. The corner vendor shouts the same order. The bus wheezes to the same halt. Nothing has changed than the surface, but the watcher has changed, has learned, and it continues to learn every time you pass by without even knowing it's there. So, what now? Do you look up at every dome? Do you trace the blinking lights? Do you cover your face, or your phone, or your habits? Maybe not. Maybe that's not the point. Maybe awareness is enough. For now, maybe knowing that something is listening makes us listen more carefully ourselves. Maybe remembering that systems are not neutral makes us question who builds them and who they serve. Maybe asking what is being seen is the first step toward being seen, truly, as human, as person. It's more than a pattern. Tomorrow morning, the light will return. The lens will remain still, and you will walk beneath it like you always have. But now, you know, it sees, not like you, not like me, but constantly. And in that knowing, something has shifted quietly, like the watcher itself. It doesn't have eyes, not in the way you think of them. There are no irises, no pupils, no eyelashes twitching in wind. It sees, not like vision, not like memory, like recognition. AI surveillance isn't a camera. It isn't face staring through glass. It isn't even a thing. It's an intention made into software. It's the ghost of observation, drifting through servers, tethered to lenses, quietly collecting patterns like a tide collects shells. And it doesn't ask for permission, because it doesn't know how to ask. It just listens and waits. Surveillance used to be simple. A guard watched a screen. A camera recorded a tape. A light blinked red when motion crossed its path. But AI surveillance is different. It doesn't just watch. It interprets. It guesses. It anticipates. It doesn't record moments. It builds models of you, of your walk, of your routines, of your coffee shop visits, your lunch hour habits, your pause near that one corner. It doesn't need your name. It builds a shape of you, a digital outline that floats just behind your real body, following as you move, not out of malice, not even out of interest, just because it was told to. So, what is it really? Imagine a river, flowing, constant, full of ripples, okay? Each drop of water is a person moving through the city, commuting, shopping, walking, pausing, passing. AI surveillance doesn't notice individual drops. It watches the current. It maps the rhythm. It remembers what usually happens. And then, when something shifts, when someone turns left, where most turn right, when someone lingers longer than usual, when footsteps speed up at odd times, it notices, not emotionally, not judgmentally, statistically. Something changed, a pattern broke, a deviation occurred, and that's enough to make a note, to raise a flag, to whisper to someone or something higher in the system. This is different. It begins with data, tiny, unremarkable data. Motion blur from a camera at second in main, a timestamp from a license plate reader, a silent ping from a Bluetooth signal, a shopping cart left unusually still, a face turned away from a storefront. At dusk, none of it is meaningful alone. But AI surveillance is not built on meaning. It is built on volume, long scale, on millions of such moments stitched together like pixels in a slow-moving portrait of a city. It doesn't see the art, it only sees the math to understand AI surveillance. You must stop thinking in snapshots and start thinking in timelines. It isn't about what you did once, it's about what you do over and over again. Where do you usually park? Which side of the street do you favor? How often do you pause near that bench? How long does your silhouette linger in the frame when you pass that corner store? Okay? Doesn't ask why you do these things. It doesn't know what it's like to need a moment of stillness before heading home. It doesn't understand grief or caution, nostalgia. It only notices that you paused again and again till your pattern becomes your identity. What makes this different from human surveillance? You might say scale. You might say speed. You might say memory. But more than anything else, it's this. It never forgets. A person forgets your face after a few days. Even a camera might lose the tape, but AI keeps everything. It turns your shadow into math, turns your breath into metadata. It turns your route into probability, and then it uses that data to decide what might happen next. You might wonder, why build this? Why give a system the power to observe so much, so quietly? The answer always begins the same. Public safety. To prevent crime, to reduce response times, to find missing people, to allocate resources more efficiently. And some of those things do happen. Amber alerts are cross-referenced with traffic footage. Stolen vehicles are flagged faster. Unusual gatherings are noticed in real time. But between the noble intentions and the quiet code, something else takes root. Assumption. Assumption that patterns predict people. That deviation equals danger. That presence implies intent. And once those assumptions are built into software, they replicate, they scale, they distribute, they filter across departments and dashboards until the question is no longer what happened, but who might do something next. It's not always malicious. A light turns green faster because a camera sees no pedestrians. A police cruiser is routed through a neighborhood with recent car break-ins. An airport camera flags an unattended bag and alerts security in seconds. Efficiency, optimization, safety. That's what the reports say. That's what the software engineers say. That's what the vendors promise at municipal technology expos. But efficiency is not the same as understanding, and optimization is not the same as justice. What AI surveillance lacks, what it can't have is context. It doesn't know the difference between a protest and a parade, between loitering and resting, between a shortcut and a stakeout, between mourning and mischief. It only knows that something doesn't match what it expected, and in that moment, the watcher becomes the predictor, and the predictor becomes the decider. And what follows might be a phone call, a patrol reroute, a warning, an arrest, a mark in a database you'll never see. But what's most haunting about AI surveillance is not what it does, it's what it might do next, because it's evolving. Some systems are learning how to track behavior over years. Others are integrating biometrics, gait, voice, even heartbeat patterns. Some are linked to private devices, rideshare data, smart home networks, and all of it happens beneath the noise of daily life. No headlines, no alerts, just quiet permissions buried in contracts. Just software updates delivered overnight. The watcher gets smarter. Not all at once, but like ivy on stone, creeping, subtle, patient. So what then is AI surveillance? Really, it is not a tool. It is not a device. It is not even a system. It is a presence, a new kind of awareness woven into the skin of the city. Not conscious, not sentient, but always there, listening, recording, comparing. It is what happens when observation becomes prediction, when watching becomes assumption, when remembering becomes judgment. It is not a villain. It is not a savior. It is a mirror held up to the way we think about safety, about control, about trust, and the reflection it offers is sometimes hard to recognize. There was a time when a camera only saw dot. It didn't think, it didn't remember, didn't care. It captured a moment, flattened it into light and shadow, and stored it like a pressed flower, delicate, silent, and forever still. But now the camera learns. It does not just record what happened. It begins to anticipate what might. It does not wait for someone to review the footage. It draws conclusions in real time, and as it watches, it adapts. This shift from seeing to knowing is quiet. There is no switch flipped, no grand announcement, no glowing red eye to signal awareness, just software. Software that reads the image, divides it into segments, classifies the movement, predicts the intent. One moment, you're a silhouette. The next, you're a walking speed, a shoulder tilt, a behavioral tag. The camera doesn't need your name. It knows your outline, and more importantly, it knows what it thinks your outline means at a glance. Nothing has changed. The camera remains in the corner, tucked into streetlights, nestled above doors, disguised in traffic poles and delivery hubs. It blinks, hums, spins. But now, it does so with purpose, not because a person is watching, but because an algorithm is. That algorithm has been trained, fed thousands of hours of video, millions of labeled images, scenes of theft, waiting, crossing, loitering, fighting, fleeing. It has no understanding of what these things feel like, only what they look like. And when it sees you, it does not see you. It sees a resemblance. Imagine this. A man in a gray hoodie walks along a storefront. He pauses for 8 seconds. His right foot shifts. He glances up at a window, then turns back toward the street. The camera records this, but the system labels it. Loitering behavior detected. Suspicious movement pattern. Footpath deviation from crowd norm. It doesn't ask why he paused. Perhaps he was looking for a lost earring. Perhaps he was nervous about an upcoming job interview. Perhaps he was admiring the light on glass. The camera doesn't know. It only knows what it's been taught to see, and what it's been taught to see is rarely neutral. These cameras are no longer mere observers. They are students. They study your body, language, your angles of motion, your hesitation at intersections. They notice when you behave like others and when you don't. And in the language of machine learning, deviation becomes anomaly. Anomaly becomes alert. The edge of your sleeve, the tilt of your head, the pacing of your feet each becomes a data point. In the camera, it doesn't blink, simply learns. What does it mean to be watched by something that learns? It means you are no longer judged by your actions alone, but by how closely your actions resemble someone else's from a training set made far away. It means the idea of intent has become a function of probability, not what you meant to do, but what you look like you might do. And it means that error, that ancient flaw of all surveillance, now scales faster than ever. Because when a camera makes a mistake, it only affects one moment. But when a learning camera makes a mistake, shares that mistake with every other camera connected to its system. It teaches, its misunderstanding spreads. You don't see the learning, but it happens behind glass, inside chips, across neural networks that simulate decision-making. The system adjusts itself, rebalances its weightings, shifts its focus. What was once normal behavior can become flagged behavior overnight, because a model updated, because a variable changed, because the data shifted, and no one told you. The learning camera does not sleep. While the city slumbers, it continues reviewing footage, retraining its models, reassessing previous assumptions. It can do this for hours, for days, for entire years. It forgets nothing. And the more it sees, the more confident it becomes, even when it is wrong, especially when no one questions its conclusions. Because in the silence of certainty, errors go undetected. Bias becomes baseline, and suspicion becomes routine. Consider the shape of a parking lot. A person walks straight to their car and drives away. Nothing unusual. Another person walks in zigzags, pauses, doubles back, spends longer than average standing still. To a human watching a screen, this might seem odd, but explainable to a camera that learns. It becomes a flag. The zigzag becomes an algorithmic risk. The pause becomes a potential precursor. The deviation is logged. The next time someone behaves similarly, the system is ready. It has learned to suspect, even if nothing ever happened. It is not that the camera knows. It is that it has been taught to believe, and belief, when encoded into software, becomes automation. Automation, unchecked, becomes judgment without appeal. Because who can argue with a lens? Who can explain themselves to code? You were walking strangely. You lingered too long. You looked similar to a flagged profile. The system saw, okay? And the system believed. There is beauty in learning. But when learning becomes surveillance, something tender must be protected. The right to be misunderstood, to pause without reason, to move without explanation, to exist without optimization. These were once unremarkable freedoms. Now they are being interpreted. In some cities, the cameras recognize faces. In others, they recognize behavior. In a few, they are experimenting with emotion detection, trying to read the corners of your mouth, the tension in your brow, the dilation of your pupils. They want to know if you are angry or sad or afraid, not because they care, but because that knowledge can be used, sold, flagged. The camera does not need empathy, need consistency, and in that consistency, begin to feel something new. A city that notices you too much but understands you too little. Is there a way to make peace with a lens that learns? Perhaps, but not without questions, not without transparency, not without oversight, not without remembering that to see is not the same as to understand, and that learning, while powerful, must be held gently when aimed at the human heart. So tonight, as you walk beneath the glow of another street lamp, remember, the camera above is learning, not about the world, about you. It does not love. It does not judge. It does not feel fear, but it remembers how long you paused to notice when you looked up, okay? And it filed that away. Not because you were dangerous, not because you were important, but because that's what it was told to do. It was not told to see you, only to watch. And sometimes that is the loneliest kind of attention there is. You've seen maps, grids of color stretched across city blocks, blue for calm, red for heat, dots glowing like scattered fireflies over rooftops, intersections, alleyways. But these are not weather forecasts. They are crime forecasts, a map of where harm might happen before it does. This is not magic. It is not prophecy. It is pattern. And now the pattern is guided by algorithms. Predictive policing is a soft term for something sharper than it sounds. It means a computer has learned from records, from statistics, from histories, to guess where crime might happen next, and it means that police, once led by phone calls and footsteps, now follow the ghost trail of data points arranged by probability. But let's step back. How did we get here? It began with data. Always. It begins with data. Decades of crime logs, timestamps, types, locations, reports of noise, trespass, theft, times when someone was robbed, times when someone was seen acting strangely, times when nothing happened but something was suspected. All of this became fuel. It was fed into models. The way leaves feed fire, quietly, steadily, without question. And the models learned not what crime is, quote, but where it has been recorded. There's a difference. The algorithm does not understand justice. It only understands recurrence. It cannot tell the difference between a broken taillight and a broken window, between a neighborhood under watch and one merely watched more often. What it sees is concentration, and what it concentrates becomes recommendation. So, the cycle begins. A neighborhood with higher historical reports is labeled high risk. Officers are sent there more often. Their presence increases recorded incidents, not necessarily because more crime occurs, but because more is seen. Each new report, each interaction, feeds back into the system. The algorithm sees this as proof. It adjusts, confirms, intensifies. The map glows redder. The patrols grow heavier. The loop becomes tighter. This is the quiet expansion of predictive policing. No one is told. Your street is now a node in a forecast. No one hears the algorithm speak, but its influence begins to shape the world. More patrols in certain places, more stops, more questions asked at bus stops, in front of bodegas, outside libraries and laundromats. Not because someone called, not because something happened, because the system said, here, look here, in this new rhythm of surveillance. The idea of suspicion shifts. Suspicion is no longer about an individual act. It becomes geography. You are not suspicious because of what you do. You are suspicious because of where you stand. The corner you wait on is flagged by the model. The alley you cut through glows faintly on a digital map. The software doesn't know you. It doesn't know why you're late, why you chose that route, why you paused to tie your shoe. It only knows that many others have passed here, and the logs said incident. So now, this place is a place to watch, and you are standing in it, or watch too. The promise of predictive policing was prevention, to stop crime before it started, to intervene early, to reduce harm. But the method relies on prediction, and prediction is only as fair as the past it learns from. Ask yourself, what if the past was not fair? What if the records were shaped by unequal enforcement, by human bias, by systemic assumptions? Then the model, no matter how advanced, inherits those ghosts. It learns from shadows, It casts more. Imagine two neighborhoods. One is quiet, wealthy, rarely patrolled. The other is dense, working class, often watched. Even if the same number of actual crimes occur, only one neighborhood will produce more reports, more arrests, more flags. The model does not know this. It believes the data is truth, so it learns to direct attention where attention has already been paid. It learns to reinforce imbalance, not because it chooses to, but because it was built without context, and context in matters of justice. Everything there is a silence at the heart of predictive systems, a silence about who is making the decisions, what data is being used, and how it is being interpreted. These systems are often protected by proprietary code, legal contracts, and technical complexity. Even city officials, even the officers who follow the maps, may not fully understand how the predictions are made. Transparency is rare, accountability rarer still, and so the system hums quietly every hour, every night, generating new maps, shaping new actions. What does this mean for daily life? It means that some parks are watched more closely. Some blocks become stop zones. Some people find themselves questioned again and again because they happen to live in a place the model remembers. It means fear can arrive not with sirens, but with suggestion. An officer sent to a high-risk area may view every gesture through a different lens, may act more quickly, may escalate more easily because the model told them, expect something, and expectations have weight. You might ask, is it working? Have predictive tools reduced crime, made cities safer? Its answer is not simple. Some studies show modest reductions in specific categories. Others show no change. Still others show harm, increased stops, arrests, and surveillance in communities already overburdened. But more than statistics, there is a human cost to being constantly predicted, to feeling that you are not a person, but a pattern, not an individual, but a probability. And what about the future? Where does predictive policing go from here? Will the models become better, more fair, more transparent? Will citizens have a say in their design? Or will the systems grow quieter, more complex, more removed from public scrutiny? Will they extend beyond policing into healthcare, education, housing? Will your likelihood of missing a rent payment, of struggling in school, of needing help, be modeled before you even ask? And if so, who gets to decide what the model should do with you? Technology is not the enemy, but it is not neutral. It reflects the hands that build it, the minds that train it, the histories it is fed, and when used to police, to patrol, to predict, it must be held to the highest standard. One rooted not just in accuracy, but in justice, in understanding that people are more than data, that context matters, that fairness is not an equation, but a commitment. So tonight, as the city lights dim and the systems hum in distant rooms, ask yourself, what is being predicted? What is being reinforced? And who is being forgotten? You are not a heat map. You are not a cluster on a chart. You are breath and history and unrecorded moments. And no algorithm, no matter how advanced, can truly know your story without first listening quietly, carefully, and with humility. The city does not sleep, but it does dim. Street by street, lamp by lamp, a hush descends beneath the sodium glow. But tonight, again every night, those lights do more than illuminate, They see, or rather, the things inside them do. This is the story of the street light that learned how to watch once. A lamp was just a lamp. It burned tungsten or gas, poured its glow onto sidewalks for the sake of safety, navigation, comfort. You might have walked beneath them without ever thinking twice. A pool of light, a break in the dark, and that was all. But then, a quiet shift began, a shift from light to sight. Cities wanted efficiency, smart grids, sensors that knew when to dim, when to brighten, when to blink off to save power. And so, intelligence was added to the base of every pole. Tiny nodes, microphones, motion detectors. Then came cameras. Then came networking. And the humble streetlight became part of something larger. A nervous system, a silent witness, a glowing observer at every corner. These new systems go by names that sound gentle, smart, lighting, urban efficiency grids, connected infrastructure. But behind the names is something both remarkable and sobering. The streetlights are watching you, not with malice, not with judgment, but with code and silence and memory. Imagine a map, a city map. Each dot is a light. Each light has a brain. Each brain is wired into a shared network. They know when you cross beneath them. They know the shape of your shadow. Some can even hear not the details of your conversations, but the pitch of a scream, the crack of a window, the crash of a car, not always to invade, sometimes to alert. A cry for help in an empty alley no longer goes unnoticed. That's the promise. at least, but promises grow complex when data flows faster than ethics, because those same sensors can do more than listen. They can record. They can analyze. They can send your location, your time, your pace to someone watching, or worse, to something watching in an algorithm. It's passionate and untiring, that sees only patterns without purpose. You pause beneath the streetlight, maybe to look at your phone, maybe to tie your shoe, maybe to wait for a friend. To you, it's a moment. To the system, it's an event. Subject paused at 9:43 p.m. for 21 seconds near zone B12. It does not know that your shoelace was loose. It only logs that you lingered. And perhaps that's harmless, till the next moment. And the next. And now, the system remembers that you tend to pause at places it is marked as anomalous. Now your profile changes. What happens when every glow overhead becomes a silent reporter? When the lights do not just shine, but interpret. They don't just know that someone walked by. They know how they walked. Fast, slow, limping, fidgeting. They know if it's a person they've seen before. They remember silhouettes. They remember clothing colors. They even learn how to distinguish humans from animals, from vehicles, from trash blowing in the wind. And when they're not sure, they ask for help from other systems, from servers in faraway buildings, from machine learning models that sort billions of frames to find the one that matches. But who tells the light what is worth remembering? Who trains the algorithm that shapes its judgment? Whose data is used to teach it the difference between safe and suspicious? These are the quiet questions tucked beneath the metal casing, atop every pole, because the streetlight, once just a bystander, has become a curator of memory. Some cities welcome this. They say it helps with traffic flow, with public safety, with finding lost children, or spotting fires before they spread. And yes, there are stories where these systems have helped, where a single captured frame led to someone being saved. But there are also other stories of lights used to track protesters, to monitor unsanctioned gatherings, to flag a crowd as high-risk based not on violence, but on presence. The network of lights grows steadily. There's no loud announcement, no news ticker declaring that your neighborhood has joined. Often, the contracts are quiet, the upgrades subtle. What was once a light bulb is now a gateway to analytics, to surveillance, to questions you didn't ask. Some poles carry license plate readers. Some read the Bluetooth signals from your passing phone. Others relay real-time audio to command centers that monitor the city like a chessboard. It's not just New York, or Chicago, or Los Angeles. Smaller cities to places you wouldn't suspect are beginning to glow with quiet intelligence. And still, we call them lights. Imagine if your lamp at home began to notice when you got up, when you left, when you returned. Who stood with you? How long they stayed? You might feel unsettled. Now multiply that by 1,000, okay? And stretch it across the skyline. That's what a smart lighting grid is. A distributed presence. Always there. Always waiting. Not for you, but on you. Some argue it's worth it, that we give up little and gain much. That a little watching makes the world safer, cleaner, smarter. But safety is not neutral. And data, once collected, rarely disappears. What is safe today might feel intrusive tomorrow. What is helpful during an emergency can feel oppressive during a protest. And what you don't notice might notice you forever. There's a concept in neuroscience called a silent synapse. It's a connection in the brain that hasn't yet been activated. Line between two thoughts that might someday light up. That's what this network of lights has become. Silent synapse in the brain of the city, waiting to fire, waiting to connect, to alert, to respond. You don't hear it, you don't see it, but it's there, always. So tonight, when you walk home under the glow, know this, that pool of light may be more than it seems. It may be remembering, not to harm, but not always to help. And in that memory, you're reduced to movement, to coordinates, to shape. The human becomes the signal. The story becomes the statistic. And the light, it simply glows on, goes on. You step outside in the morning light. You catch your reflection in the cafe window. A glance, a moment, a flicker. You keep walking, but just around the corner, a lens sees you again. Not just your coat or the arc of your step, but your face. Its angles, its shadows, its history. And though you forget the moment, the camera does not. Not entirely. Somewhere, in some cloud, the footage waits. The question is not, was I seen? You were. It's not, was I recorded? Very likely. The real question, the quiet one that hides behind street signs and circuit boards, is this: who owns the footage of your face? In the past, the answer would have been simple. Surveillance was centralized. There were cameras. There were tapes. There were rooms with monitors, security guards, slow rewind wheels. It was clunky, human, contained. But now, surveillance has become weightless. There are no tapes, just TIMESTAM. No rooms, server farms. No guard watching in real time. Just algorithms searching patterns after the fact. Your face no longer needs to exist in a photo album or security log. It only needs to be data. Let's trace a moment. You walk past a municipal building. A city on camera logs your passage. That's public surveillance. But next door, a retail store's smart camera pings you too. Not just for security, but for analytics. How long did you pause in front of the window? Did your posture suggest interest? Are you a returning visitor? That's private surveillance. And then across the street, an apartment complex has installed its own AI-powered system, not just to record break-ins, but to recognize tenants. The system flags your face as non-resident, familiar pattern. That's residential surveillance. And on your phone, apps running in the background, ping nearby Bluetooth nodes and location services, connecting the dots between buildings, brands, and footsteps. That's passive surveillance, all from the same walk, all storing you, or rather, a reflection of you, built from pixels and probabilities, in this ecosystem of observation. Your face is not just a face, it is a key. It can unlock doors, match identities, sort strangers from citizens, link one moment to 100 others across time, space, and system. Your face is now a search term, and the systems that scan it aren't always public or even visible. Who owns this biometric blueprint? Depends. If the footage comes from a government camera, you may think it belongs to the public. But public doesn't always mean accessible. In some cities, even asking for the footage of your own presence can be denied. Privacy laws tangle with exemptions. Security claims trump transparency. Data collected in the name of safety becomes sealed away, not lost, just unshared, not deleted, just unreachable. If it's a private company that caught your image, you may be a customer or a data point. Some stores use facial analysis to determine demographic information, age ranges, motion estimates, even fatigue or attention span. These clips aren't necessarily labeled with your name. That doesn't make them anonymous, because the more you're seen, the easier you are to recognize. Even if the system doesn't know your name, it knows where you've been, how often, how recently. It remembers your return more faithfully than your memory does, and it assigns value accordingly. Now, consider facial recognition vendors, companies that build models by training AI on thousands, sometimes millions of faces. Where do those faces come from? Social media, public archives, leaked databases, CCTV partnerships, sometimes from you, without your consent, without your knowledge. Your face, the one you smiled into a camera for, the one your driver's license holds, the one that blinked in your friend's vacation photo, becomes part of a system designed to scan crowds, not maliciously, always, sometimes to find missing persons, or wanted fugitives, or people in danger. But the tool is neutral. Its use is not, and you never signed the terms. You might wonder, don't privacy laws protect us? Some do. The GDP are in Europe, CCPA in California, SPIPA in Illinois. Laws that say you must be told, you must opt in. Your biometric data cannot be sold without permission. But enforcement varies. And technology moves faster than legislature. Where one city restricts facial recognition, another adopts it under a different name. Where one state bans the sale of biometric profiles, another allows companies to sidestep by anonymizing metadata. But anonymized data can often be de-anonymized. All it takes is a few more puzzle pieces. And the systems that harvest your image do not forget. So who owns the footage of your face? The answer shifts. It may belong to a city agency, a private developer, a cloud service provider, a contractor who sold the system, or a third-party AI firm training models on what your eyes once revealed. And all of them might keep it longer than you ever expected. You delete a selfie. They keep the scan. You turn your face away. They trace the profile. You never look at the camera, but it still knows you were there. This isn't science fiction. It's contract law. It's optics and databases. It's real-time processing on servers cooled by industrial fans under cities you've never visited. And what of control? Can you ask them to erase your face? Sometimes, sometimes not. Can you know who has it? Unlikely. Even companies that say, we do not store facial images, may store encodings, digital summaries of your face that can still match you later. You may not remember all the places you've been, but a machine might, and your face could be the thread that stitches those places together, across time, across devices, across networks you never agreed to join. There's beauty in a face. It is how we know one another, how we greet, grieve, laugh, listen. But in the eye of a machine, your face becomes something else. A signature, a tag, a token to track, a truth that's only partial, flattened into geometry and code. So the next time you see a camera in a doorway, above a train turnstile, near the ATM, tucked into a street lamp, softly, though no one may answer, where will my face go? Who will see it again? And when they do, will they know it was me? Was me? You drift off to sleep. The curtains are drawn, the lights low. Outside, the world softens into stillness. Your breathing slows. Your body sinks into rest. But your face does not sleep. Not really. Somewhere in a quiet server rack, beneath layers of code, your likeness lives on. It isn't dreaming. It isn't aging. Decay. It isn't waiting. It's moving, being scanned, matched, sorted, used, while your body rests in the dark. Your data continues its work. Facial recognition is no longer a tool you interact with. It's a system you exist inside of. It doesn't need your attention or your awareness. It doesn't knock on your door or ask for permission. It only needs a past photo, a public video, a single recorded glance. From there, it builds a network of moments, a quiet, recursive mirror of where you've been and where you might go next. Let's imagine a moment. Years ago, you stood in front of a fountain. Someone took a picture. You blinked. That photo ended up online. Not famous, not viral. Just there, and somewhere down the line, a training model used it. Not for beauty, not for memory, but for pattern. It learned the curve of your brow, the shadow under your cheekbone, the average distance between your eyes. And now that information exists not as an image, but as a signature, a biometric fingerprint, drawn from your face, stored, searchable, shareable. When you go to sleep, you might think the world pauses, that privacy returns, that digital attention dims. But in cities wrapped in quiet sensors, the watching never fully stops. Late night walkers pass under lamps equipped with AI-enabled lenses. Night shift janitors glance at reflective doors that see more than they reflect. And if your face passes through these places, a glance caught by chance, the system remembers. It might flag you as a match, or a near match, or unknown, but familiar. It may send that data to a central node, or store it locally, or hand it to a private contractor who reviews alerts while the rest of the city sleeps. Meanwhile, your phone rests beside you. Dark screen, silent room, but perhaps an app still runs in the background, tracking geolocation, syncing images, floating sleep patterns. Maybe you once used a facial recognition login to unlock a screen, to access a bank, to test a new feature in a social app that scanned those infrared dots cast across your face to map depth and texture. May have been stored by more than just your device. Some developers store facial data for testing, or product improvement, or anonymized research. But anonymized doesn't always mean untraceable, especially when your face is its own ID. And so, while you lie still, wrapped in blankets, sheltered in rest, your digital self continues to move, not by choice, not maliciously, just continuously. The dream of facial recognition once shimmered with promise. Unlock your phone without typing. Enter stadiums without lines. Be found, if ever lost. It sounded like magic, but now the spell lingers longer than expected. It extends beyond the point of consent, beyond awareness, into every hour and every shadow, and in its growth, it has crossed into sleep. Imagine a hotel chain. They install new security systems, smart cameras in the lobby, in the halls, outside every elevator. They don't record all the time, just motion events, anomalies, pattern breaks, but their cameras are linked to a service that offers intelligent guest analytics. This service scans faces to identify returning guests, to detect potential threats, to optimize staffing based on guest behavior. You check in late at night. No line, no conversation. You pass the camera once, just once. It tags your face, matches it to a previous stay. Not because you said hello, because your profile, built over time, matched softly in silence. Your sleep begins. Up the scan continues. In another city, another system logs your presence, because the provider services both locations, because the software recognizes you, even when you don't recognize the context. And that night, somewhere in the cloud, a profile is updated. Another data point added while you sleep. You might never see this profile, never read the footnotes it creates beneath your eyes, but it exists. Not always malicious, not always accurate, but persistent, and mostly invisible. In some cities, public housing units have experimented with facial entry systems. Residents can enter without keys. The doors open with a glance. Convenient, efficient, safe. But what if you didn't want to be scanned? What if your face is tired, or blocked, or old in ways the system doesn't recognize? What if the match fails and the door stays locked? If the system flags your visitor as a stranger and records the moment as suspicious, what happens to that flag? Does it fade or get stored, labeled, and shared? Does it become part of someone else's sleep story? Even in our most restful hours, the watching doesn't stop. The algorithm does not blink. The camera does not yawn. The server does not dream. It only continues, learning, linking, labeling. There is beauty in slowness, in stillness, the quiet anonymity of night. But facial recognition changes the nature of stillness, because stillness, to a pattern-seeking AI, is just another kind of signal, one that says, I am present, I am real, even when I do nothing at all. And so the question becomes, is there a place where your face can rest without being remembered? Not just behind closed doors, not just in private settings, but truly unscanned, unmatched, uninterpreted. Can your image exists without being harvested? Can your presence pass without being stored? Perhaps in the moments just before dawn, when the sky lightens, when the data centers hum, when the city prepares to wake, your body stretches, your eyes blink, open, and your face re-enters the world, not as data, but as you, just you, alive, aware, untranslated. For now. You never saw the meeting happen. There were no protests outside the building, no breaking news, no viral clip on your feed, just a quiet exchange, a handshake, a contract signed on an ordinary Tuesday. This is how AI surveillance spreads, not through force, but through formality, through partnerships wrapped in policy, through phrases like public safety and urban innovation, through language that feels soft on the tongue, but firm on the street. It begins with a proposal. A city official meets a corporate representative. They sit in a climate-controlled room, look over sleek presentations. The company offers software, hardware, support, insight. They promise real-time situational awareness, improved emergency response, crime prediction through data analysis. The city replies with nods, concerns, maybe a few red lines. They discuss funding, oversight, the scope of installation. Then a memorandum of understanding is drafted. Then a pilot program. Then, almost imperceptibly, the first camera is mounted on a lamppost outside your neighborhood library. These aren't evil deals. They're just quiet. They pass through committees, rarely voted on by the public, buried in budgets, filed in records you'll never read. And so your city begins to change. Before you even notice, the corporation benefits from the partnership. Their software spreads, trained on live data, refined, enhanced. The city gains what it sees as vision, eyes that never close, memory that never fades, predictive maps that claim to know where trouble might walk next. It's not that anyone wanted to spy on you, not at first. It's just that cities are busy, and corporations are persuasive, and the tools sound so helpful on paper. Now, zoom out for a moment across the country and the world. This pattern repeats. Hundreds of cities, dozens of firms, each drawing lines in the same quiet ink, each installing more nodes, more integrations, more overlap between public infrastructure and private platforms. And the result: you live in a city that sees you more than it used to, but not through its own eyes, through borrowed vision, rented algorithms, software that's updated remotely by companies you've never heard of, in places you've never been. You cross an intersection. The walk signal glows white. The pavement is familiar, but the pole beside you houses a multi-use sensor, one that can track motion, count bodies, analyze patterns. The data doesn't stay there. It travels. It's uploaded to a cloud dashboard viewed by city analysts, and possibly the vendor's own staff. If you asked where that data lives, you might not get a clear answer. A data center in Virginia, a server in Utah, an overseas backup. The agreements say as needed for operational purposes. They say secured with industry standards. They say retention subject to policy. But they don't say exactly where your moment of waiting at the crosswalk now resides. Later, you visit a public park. A small sign near the entrance says, "This facility may be monitored for safety purposes." If you don't think twice, there's no camera you can see. No one staring from a booth, but maybe a sensor is hidden in the canopy. Maybe the lighting is smart. Maybe an AI network is mapping foot traffic in real time. And if a company helped install the system, chances are they're learning from your visit. Not your name, not your thoughts. Just your path, your duration, your frequency of return. These fragments build something bigger. Behavioral heat maps, predictive models, designed for safety, perhaps, but also for profit. Corporations don't install surveillance for free. They may donate hardware, discount services, partner on infrastructure, but in return, they often ask for access to data, to trends, to anonymize behaviors that train their next generation of products. They may want footage, or face prints, or behavioral flowcharts. They want information because in the world of AI, information is currency, the raw material of improvement, and cities underfunded and overburdened will often agree to these exchanges, not out of malice, but out of need. Now, think of how many city departments make small, quiet deals. The transportation office adds smart cameras to buses. The police install networked license plate readers. The sanitation department deploys waste sensors that track movement patterns. Each agreement might sound unrelated. Each may serve a valid civic purpose, but together they form a nervous system, a web of observation. Hey, map of life, seen through silent partnerships. You didn't sign anything. You didn't say yes, cool, but you didn't say no either, because you were never asked. That's the core of it. These agreements live above your awareness, nestled in bureaucratic branches, insulated by technical language, protected by phrases like public-private collaboration, innovation for safer cities, community engagement through data. But most communities never actually engage. They aren't shown the scope, the full footage, retention policies, the algorithms used to categorize behavior. They're only shown the benefits. The company provides a dashboard that shows fewer reported incidents, or improved emergency response times, or greater park usage during evening hours. And these are good things, but they arrive alongside new forms of invisibility. Surveillance you can't see. It's tracking you didn't expect. Decisions shaped by systems you don't control. Sometimes there are public hearings, community forums, oversight committees, but these come late, after deployment, after installation. The quiet agreements have already set their roots. They come once people ask, what is this camera doing here? Why did I get flagged entering the building? Who decided this was okay? And often the answer is, it was part of a vendor agreement. It helps us serve you better. It's in the contract. Here's the softer truth. Many city officials don't fully understand the systems they deploy. They're not engineers. They're not trained in machine learning. They trust vendors the way you trust your phone to deliver the weather. They're trying to solve problems, to make cities safer, more efficient, more modern. They don't always see the scope until the system grows beyond them. What happens when a vendor shuts down, or is acquired, or pivots to a different business model? What happens to the data, to the cameras, to the models trained on local lives? Who inherits the eyes that once served your city? And will they still be watching? These questions don't have satisfying answers. Not yet, because our legal systems are slower than our technological ones, because the contracts are faster than our conversations, because what feels like a tool often becomes a structure before we realize it. So here we are, in cities of light and silence, of code and cobblestone, of policy and shadow, surrounded by sensors, some public, some private, some existing in a liminal space between. And we wonder, what do these agreements mean for us if we never agreed to them? You walk through the night. The city hums, lights change. A soft breeze moves the leaves. No one is watching you, exactly. And yet, you are not alone. You are part of a map, okay? A model, a motion graph. You are helping a system learn without speaking, and the system, in return, will shape what you see. It begins with a gesture, a walk across a plaza, a glance toward a building, a pause at a curb. These are the things AI sees, not your thoughts, not your reasons, only your movement, only data. In the age of quiet surveillance, data is captured constantly, but meaning is often left behind. A camera above a door records your entry. Its lens notices one person, average build, wearing neutral colors, entering at 9:42 a .m.2. The system This is a fact, not a moment in your morning, not a memory, not part of a bigger day. It does not know that you stopped at that door because your friend is inside, or because you're looking for help, or because you were curious about the flyer posted beside the handle. It only knows the what, not the why. And that gap between action and context is where the danger sleeps. Artificial intelligence is not sentient. It does not feel confusion or sympathy or the nuance of hesitation. It sees a man running, but not the reason. It does not know he's chasing a bus or late for an interview or playing with his child. It knows only male, fast motion, heading east, and perhaps, depending on his programming. That data is sent to a predictive policing system, which may flag the area as high activity, which may prompt an officer to patrol, which may escalate a moment that was never dangerous to begin with, all because the system cannot ask, why is he running? There's a story buried in every data set, but the story isn't told by the numbers themselves. It's told in context, and context requires understanding, emotion, imagination, history. AI does not imagine. It does not recall how grief can look like stillness, or how celebration can look like chaos, or how a person waiting nervously on a bench might just be trying to gather courage before a difficult conversation. It does not know you woke up late, that you skipped breakfast, right? You're wearing your jacket because it smells like someone you miss. It sees only a shape, a posture, teamdom. You stand near the door for 20 minutes to the AI that might register as loitering, anomalous behavior, idle presence. But maybe you're waiting for your friend. Maybe you're nervous to go inside. Maybe you're trying to remember if you returned your book. These details vanish in the language of AI. They are not part of the input, only proximity, duration, frequency, and over time. Those measurements become models. The system builds rules, thresholds, boundaries, not because it's malicious, but because it is blind to the full picture. Context is what makes you human. It's what allows one person to cry in joy while another cries in sorrow, and for others to understand the difference. But in a world increasingly governed by sensors, the data of your day is stripped of its soul, reduced to arrive at 7:02, stood for 3 minutes, departed, westbound. And when those numbers are used to assess risk, or allocate resources, or flag behavior, the stakes rise, because misreading a story written in numbers can change a life. A teenage girl walks through a mall. The AI notes her path. 3 entries. Into a store. Back and forth. She picks up a lipstick, then puts it down to the system that might signal shoplifting behavior. But maybe she's unsure. Maybe she's saving up. Maybe she just wants to feel normal in a world that often tells her she isn't. No algorithm knows what it's like to be a teenage girl in a fluorescent lit world of invisible pressure. It just sees a pattern, and patterns, without context, can punish innocence. There are stories of people stopped by police because their faces resembled others in a database. Stories of a misidentifying gender, race, emotion, because even emotion itself is often reduced to visual cues. A furrowed brow equals anger. A smile equals happiness. Closed eyes equals disinterest. But what if your brow furrows because you're reading? What if your smile hides pain? What if your closed eyes are a moment of peace? Context changes everything. And yet, many surveillance systems are not built to ask. Now, imagine a city shaped by that lack of asking. Imagine decisions made by patterns, not understanding. A person denied entry because the system marked them as suspicious. A neighborhood given more police presence because of movement patterns at night. A child added to a watch list because they lingered in a hallway. The system doesn't hate, it doesn't target with emotion, but it also doesn't care. It is indifferent to nuance. And in that indifference, real harm can happen, even more gently. Not all misuse comes from code. Sometimes the humans behind the system misread the numbers. Trust the model too deeply. Forget that behind every dot on the heat map is a living being, with reasons, and sometimes the model is right, but the meaning is wrong. A spike in park visits during late hours. Is that crime? Just a heat wave pushing people outside into cooler air? An increase in foot traffic near a corner store? Is it suspicious behavior? Or a sale on something families need? AI doesn't know. It sees only the spike, only the curve, only the threshold crossed, and decisions may follow without a pause to ask why. The data becomes policy. More cameras, more alerts, more reviews. The surveillance grows not because of evil, but because of misunderstanding. A child sneaks out to see a friend. The camera flags it. The system notes a pattern, and soon that neighborhood is under watch. No one asked why he left. No one asked what he needed. The data was clean, but the story was incomplete. So, what can we do? We can remember that data is not destiny, that numbers need narration, that every surveillance system should include room for context, that no AI can replace the gentle complexity of a human story. We can push for transparency, for oversight, for systems that ask not just what you did, but why it might matter. And we can ask, who interprets this data? With what goals? With what training? With what care? Because if we treat numbers as truth without understanding the shape behind them, we risk building a world that punishes unpredictability. And unpredictability is where all life begins. You take a walk tonight, you pause at a window, you look up at the moon, you sigh. The sensors might register your stop. The camera might note your posture. The algorithm might log the time, but the system doesn't know what it meant to you. It doesn't know you thought of your father, or a dream, or a song from when you were young. It just knows you stood still. And in that stillness, a world of difference can hide. There is no announcement, no ribbon cutting, no siren or warning bell. Surveillance does not arrive with spectacle. It spreads like fog, quiet, painless, everywhere. It begins with a single camera, then a few more, then a contract, then an upgrade. One system speaks to another, then another, and suddenly a city listens to itself in whispers of code. This is how the unseen expansion begins. Walk down any quiet street. Notice the lamppost. It once held only light. Now it holds a sensor, a camera, a box that hums gently behind its metal. It doesn't blink. It doesn't flash, but it watches. Perhaps it listens to. Perhaps it counts passing footsteps. Perhaps it captures plate numbers as they roll by in silence. You wouldn't know, because its job is not to be seen. Its job is to remember, and it does. There was a time when surveillance was obvious. Heavy lenses, monitors with grainy feeds, security guard in a booth. But now, the watcher is everywhere in the smooth glass of storefronts, the hollow eye of a parking meter, the curve of a traffic signal. Not because someone is hiding it, but because the infrastructure now breathes it. Surveillance is no longer added. It is embedded, a feature, not a fixture. In your phone rests a silent tether. GPS, accelerometer, microphone, your own sensor array. Your apps ask where you are, not always maliciously, often to help, to guide, to serve, but they learn nonetheless. Where you pause when you scroll, how long your screen stays lit after midnight. Your smart home learns your rhythm. Your doorbell tracks motion. Your thermostat guesses your arrival. And none of it feels intrusive until you realize it doesn't forget. City councils don't hold press conferences to announce new surveillance rollouts. They issue bids. They review proposals. They adopt pilot programs with names like Public Safety Grid Enhancement or Urban Optimization Interface. The language is soft, neutral, intentionally dull, because the less exciting it sounds, the less likely anyone will ask, what does this system actually do? And so, it grows. An airport adds facial recognition. A transit system adds behavioral analysis. A school installs sensors to monitor hallway flow. Not to spy, but to optimize, to protect, to collect, and soon, data is not just gathered, but connected. You'll walk through the park. You'll wait at the bus stop. You'll purchase at the corner store. All pieces, all time-stamped, all tagged, sorted, stored. No alarms go off when the system expands. There is no moment where a city suddenly says, now we know everything. Instead, the knowing increases by degrees. Like water warming. A few more intersections. Get traffic cams. A few more buildings. Install smart locks. A few more neighborhoods sign on to share footage with the police databases. Step by quiet step. The city digitizes its memory, and is not always sinister. There are cameras that catch crimes. There are systems that help find missing people. Are programs that ease traffic, that help ambulances arrive faster, that save lives. The expansion is not inherently evil, but it is inherently quiet, and in that quiet, mistakes can nest, oversight can lag, consent can blur, boundaries can shift without notice. You walk past a grocery store, its outdoor lights hum softly, its entrance camera sees you. Not because you're suspicious, but because it sees everyone. It may not record you in isolation, but it adds you to a tapestry, a composite of who was there, when, how long, and when patterns emerge. They're not just statistics. They're flags, triggers, alerts, in a city where every corner listens. There is no longer such a thing as going unnoticed, and while anonymity may still technically exist, it is now an exception, not a baseline. You are known by your gait, by your heat signature, by the way you hold your phone, not because you're being hunted, but because knowing has become the default. It isn't just cameras either. License plate readers, or FID trackers, Bluetooth sniffers, Wi-Fi ping collectors, each with its own purpose, each with its own database, each adding its brushstroke to the digital portrait of your day. And when they interconnect, they create something larger than any one feed. They create continuity. They create memory. The unseen expansion doesn't knock. It updates overnight. It patches silently. And the people who manage it aren't always shadowy figures in dark rooms. Sometimes they're civic employees, IT contractors, software engineers, adding features, fixing bugs, answering emails. They're not building a panopticon. They're just doing their jobs, but the system still grows. And the question becomes, at what point does helpful become invasive? What point does remembered become permanent? At what point do we forget what it felt like to walk without being noticed? This isn't paranoia. It's presence. It's the quiet knowledge that the world is learning to see in ways that don't always match how we wish to be seen. It's not always dystopian, but it is directional, and that direction points toward a future where forgetting becomes rare, where privacy becomes opt-in, not assumed, where silence becomes signal. Some cities push back. They pass ordinances. They ban facial recognition. They create public dashboards to show what systems are in use. But elsewhere, the map is expanding. New suburbs install predictive analytics. Small towns adopt thermal scanning. Public parks get smart lighting that adjusts not just to darkness, but to movement. You sit on a bench. The light shifts above you. Sensor logs presence, and no one speaks, but the system adds you too. The night, you may never be identified. No one may ever review that file, but the file exists. That is the change. The archive becomes deeper. The net becomes finer. And the watchers, though not always watching, never close their eyes. You get used to it. Most people do. You smile at your reflection in the mirrored glass of a building, not realizing it is not a mirror, but a one-way lens. You walk past a lamppost with a small metal box that looks like nothing. You ride a train whose cameras stream in real time to an algorithm tuned to detect agitation. The system is not hostile, but it is always awake, and its memory is long. There's a kind of comfort in forgetting. It's freedom in being ENREMEMBERED. But the expansion of surveillance is not built on comfort. It is built on capacity. The capacity to store, to recall, to compare, and it grows daily, not through conquest, but through updates, the kind you never notice. Tonight, your city hums quietly. Its lights blink in rhythm. Its sensors rest on poles. Its servers cool themselves in the dark. Somewhere, a new camera activates, its presence unannounced. Its function, logged in a spreadsheet you will never read. Another step, another dot, another addition to the unseen expansion. A city is not just steel and stone. It pulses, it hums, it breathes in rhythms you rarely notice until you look closely. Beneath the gridded streets and flickering lights, a nervous system is forming, not made of flesh or synapse, but of fiber, optics, traffic signals, and silent lines of code threading through the dark. Imagine you are walking home. The sun has just slipped behind the skyline, a painting glass towers in slow twilight. The air carries the warmth of the pavement, fading with the dusk. You pass under a streetlight. It glows on cue, not because someone flipped a switch, but because a sensor whispered to a network that your footsteps were near. It noticed your presence, logged the moment, and softly illuminated your path like a neuron firing in the brain. This is not magic, 'tis architecture, but not the kind you see. The kind that hides in circuits beneath manholes, behind unmarked panels mounted high on metal poles. It is a city's sensory array, a system of perception that does not need eyes or ears to know when something shifts. Cities used to be reactive. A pothole was fixed after it widened. A street lamp was replaced after it failed. An ambulance was sent after someone called for help. But now, the city learns to sense, to feel vibration, motion, temperature, light, and to respond before anyone notices something is wrong. The pavement itself may carry sensors, wired just beneath the surface. They register pressure, count footsteps, feel the rhythm of wheels. When traffic grows dense, they send word to an unseen center where algorithms adjust signals in response. The city breathes in congestion and exhales. Green lights, it shifts its rhythm without a voice raised, without a hand lifted, just quiet signals, like thoughts moving through a brain. Overhead, street lamps don't just light the way. Some now carry microphones, not to eavesdrop, but to listen for a scream, a car crash, a shattered window. Sound is filtered, patterns are scanned, and only anomalies rise to human attention. This is not surveillance as you knew it. This is the evolution of infrastructure into sensory organs. Water pipes no longer simply carry water. They are monitored, their pressure tracked, their temperature logged, their wear and strain analyzed. Leaks are detected, not days later by wet footprints in the dirt, but seconds after they begin by sensors tremble in electricity grids, once blind to fluctuation. Now detect microfailures like neurons noticing pain before the injury fully blooms. A trash can buzzes softly when it's full. A recycling bin pings the sanitation system before overflow. Every object, once inert, becomes communicative. It doesn't talk like you do, but it signals. It pings. It glows quietly on a citywide map of information. Even trees are being studied. Smart irrigation systems test soil moisture. Air quality monitors read the breath of leaves on city boulevards. And when pollution spikes, alerts ripple outward to agencies, schools, maybe even to you. The trees cannot speak, but the city listens too. And slowly, they become part of this quiet nervous system too. Public transport grows smarter. Buses know when they're late. Trains share their coordinates. Platforms count waiting bodies, not by tickets, but by motion. And the system self-adjusts. A train is delayed and another is dispatched. Not by a conductor's decision, but by a system that understood imbalance. As soon as it began, the city is no longer just managed. It is sensing. It is interpreting. It's beginning to decide, but not in a conscious way. Not in the way humans debate or deliberate. Its thoughts are probabilistic, statistical, based on flows, not feelings. But still, they influence real-world outcomes. And so, the nervous system grows. There is no central brain. Not really. It is distributed, fragmented, scattered across devices, agencies, cloud servers, but connections form. Slowly at first, then faster crosswalk sensors talk to traffic lights, weather stations share data with power grids, emergency dispatch syncs with street cameras. Each piece informs the next dot until coordination begins to resemble cognition. A fire breaks out. City responds before you call. Sensors detect the heat spike. Cameras confirm smoke. Emergency lighting activates. Traffic signals clear a path for first responders before they even arrive. You witness a smooth reaction. But you don't see the signals that danced in silence to make it possible. The city knew something was wrong, and it acted, not from instinct, but from protocol written in code beneath its digital skin. There are benefits, of course. Fewer delays, faster services, smarter energy use, safer streets. A city that feels alive in its responsiveness, like a living organism, adjusting its temperature, regulating its flow, healing its wounds. But this organism also remembers. It logs what it feels, stores what it hears, builds patterns from your movement, and slowly, the nervous system becomes memory. Memory that is searchable, memory that is permanent, memory that, one day, might make decisions of its own. What happens when your city knows you didn't ride the train today? When it notices your usual path has changed? When it suggests you're in danger, not because you said so, but because your patterns broke? It begins as safety, but it inches towards supervision, and the lines blur quietly beneath the convenience. No one stands at a podium and says, "The city is now awake," but awareness creeps in, one device at a time. A sensor here, an update there, until the city doesn't just host your life, it reflects it, guides it, maybe even anticipates it, like a brain that knows what the hand is about to do before it moves. In this future, you're a part of the nervous system too. Every tap of your card, every call to 311, every time you ask your smart assistant for directions, you're adding input. The city learns not just how to move, but how you move, and it adapts. This isn't a dystopia. Not necessarily. It could be beautiful. A city that responds to you, that protects you, conserves energy, reduces waste, makes life easier by knowing what's needed before it's asked. But the key is in the balance. For a nervous system to remain healthy, it must not overfire. It must not misinterpret, and it must never forget who it serves. You walk home again beneath the same streetlights, the same invisible sensors. A soft breeze carries the scent of rain, and the city feels it. It prepares. Drains adjust. Look alerts. Update. Power grids shift to accommodate shelter demand, and you feel nothing except calm but beneath your feet. In fiber and current, the city pulses with quiet knowing. A nervous system without a skull, but alive nonetheless. You didn't sign anything. No pen touched paper. A checkbox blinked beside a user agreement. No one stood at your door, asking kindly, "May we watch you as you walk to the store?" And yet, your footsteps are traced. Your path is patterned. Your face recognized. Consent was never asked for, and it was never clearly given. It simply dissolved, folded into terms of service, into silent updates, into glowing policies you never read because you were only trying to find parking, or catch the train, or find your way home. You live in a city now where everything listens, and not just listens, remembers. Streetlights recall motion. Cameras don't just record, they interpret. Microphones detect tone. Algorithms watch for change. You did not say yes, but your presence became participation. Your body became data. It happened so softly. One day, a crosswalk speaks aloud. Wait, walk, helpful, safe. Another day, it recognizes the rhythm of your approach and changes just before your foot reaches the curb. Convenient later. You read about facial recognition in the subway. It's for criminal detection. They say, not for you, it's for others. But the camera doesn't know the difference. It knows only patterns, angles, contours, ratios of face-to-face. Consent used to mean awareness. Now, it means presence. By being here in this building, on this street, near this object, you are being read. The sensors do not ask. They observe, like rain soaking into a coat. Your data enters their circuits without notice. It is not taken violently. It is not even taken rudely. It is simply collected. A smile here, a glance there, a sudden stop, a wrong turn, a curious tilt of the head. Everything has value. Even your silence speaks. Even your absence counts. When you don't show up to your usual cafe, when your bus pass is unused, when your phone no longer pings from your routine corner, the system notices. It wonders where you went. It adjusts its predictions. It recalculates the temperature of the city's rhythm. You are always part of the conversation. Even when you were quiet at first, it was about safety. A camera at the train station to prevent violence. A microphone at the intersection to detect glass breaking. A motion sensor at the school gate to catch intruders. It was protection. You didn't resist. You nodded. Of course. Why not? Until the devices grew quiet, smaller, hidden, and they stopped protecting only. They started predicting, directing, profiling. Now, it's not just the city watching. It's companies, clouds of servers humming far away, turning your habits into insights, your pauses into potential, your patterns into profit. Data, once yours, now travels faster than your voice. Sold, shared, modeled, and still, no one asked. No. One said, are you comfortable with your memories being stored in a building you've never seen? Consent has become passive. The absence of resistance is now the presence of permission. And yet, when did you agree to be known by the angles of your cheekbones? When did you allow your walk to be traced like a signature across pavement? You are not angry, not even afraid. Perhaps just uncertain. Unsure if this is how cities are supposed to work now. Unclear whether silence should ever be mistaken for agreement. The word public has shifted. Once, it meant people gathered in squares, in markets, in libraries, a place of shared presence, of visible community. Now, public means accessible, and accessible means observable, and observable means recorded. You stepped into a public space. Therefore, the watchers believe you agreed to be seen. But being seen is not the same as being known, and being known is not the same as being remembered. Forever. Every camera carries history, and history does not forget easily. You danced once, years ago, at 2 a.m. on an empty street. You didn't know a lens caught it. You didn't know your joy was stored in some silent archive under a string of numbers and dates. It's not sinister. It's just strange. Your past belongs to a machine now. One you never met. One you never shook hands with. The city has terms of use, but you never read them. Not because you don't care, but because they're not made for reading. They're made for legality, not clarity. long pages, fine print, updates that roll in like fog, dense and unreadable. And so you accept, because you want to ride the train, because you want the free Wi-Fi, because you need the map to find your friend. And in return, you give your presence, which in this world is enough. This isn't about panic. This isn't a warning shouted in the night. This is a quiet recognition that the world has changed its manners, and you are allowed to wonder how. You are allowed to ask why the default became yes. You are allowed to wish that somewhere someone had asked before they installed the camera that now knows your name. Because consent is more than paperwork, more than laws and policies. It is a feeling, the feeling of being informed, of being asked, of being included in the shaping of your surroundings. And that feeling is fading, replaced with efficiency, replaced with optimization, replaced with a promise that it's all for your good. But even good things deserve permission. Still, the city hums on. The lights change, the doors open, the sensors glow, the servers sort, and your reflection appears on screens you never see. You're part of this world, this city of circuits and patterns, but you did not vote for its shape, quite. You did not cast a ballot for the memory it keeps. And maybe you would have, but maybe not. That choice was never placed in your hands. You finish your walk. The air is soft. The breeze is kind. And yet, something lingers. A quiet knowing that everything you did was quietly watched by something you never met. You're not paranoid. You're just aware, awake. You did not give consent. And now you wonder, in this world built on patterns, what silence really means. It watches. It remembers. It calculates. And sometimes it misjudges. Not because it is evil, not because it means harm, but because patterns can look alike, and meaning can be lost between the lines. This is the quiet truth. Even the smartest system can still make a very human mistake. Only now. There's no breath, no voice, no glance of remorse behind it. Just lines of logic that led somewhere unintended. It begins with confidence. Hey, it appears on the screen. A name is assigned. A flag is raised. The system sees what it thinks it sees. It matches the eyes, the curve of a mouth, the angle of a chin. But it does not know that this person was never there, was never involved, was just walking home after dinner. And yet, the pattern was close enough for the machine to say, yes, that is them. So it says it, and the error begins. A man is stopped at the airport. He doesn't understand why his suitcase is ordinary, his face familiar only to himself. But the system doesn't need memory. It only needs confidence, a score high enough to believe it's right. And so it speaks through screens and scanners and sensors. And the man is pulled aside. He is confused. He is polite. He has nothing to hide. But the system saw something, and the humans around it trusted the machine. These moments don't make headlines. They rarely even make noise. They happen in lobbies, in parking garages, in banks, on sidewalks. Woman is denied a loan. She meets every requirement. She has no debt. A home is stable. But somewhere, an AI flagged her neighborhood or misunderstood her silence during a phone call, or saw her online purchases and decided too risky. Human at the desk shrugs. I'm sorry. This is what the system decided. No explanation. Accountability. It's the cold assurance of a machine's certainty. And then there are children. A teenage boy is flagged by facial recognition in a school security system. His face matches a profile, not perfectly, just closely enough. He is pulled from class. He is questioned. The teachers mean well. The system meant well, but the boy is shaken. He didn't know that walking through a door could become a case. He didn't know that his face would be stored, evaluated, compared, judged, and no one told him how to appeal to an algorithm. When AI gets it wrong, it rarely apologizes. It does not blush. It does not stammer. It does not say, I misunderstood. It simply recalibrates, takes in the new data, trains again, and the harm becomes part of its learning curve. We think of machines as precise, as objective, as clean, but precision is not perfection. Objectivity is not empathy, and AI sees patterns, not people. It watches for data points, not lives. And so, a frown might mean anger or confusion, or simply the sun in someone's eyes. A pause might mean guilt or thoughtfulness, or just a bad Wi-Fi connection. The machine doesn't know, doesn't ask that, only labels, and sometimes the labels are wrong. You might think these are rare exceptions, glitches, but what happens when systems are scaled, when millions of decisions are made each hour, quietly, invisibly, on your behalf? A small error multiplied by millions is no longer small. A mistaken identity becomes a statistic, okay? Denied service becomes a trend, okay? A lost opportunity becomes a pattern of exclusion. And still, no one is quite sure where to point the blame. Is it the coder, the algorithm, the data set, or is it us for trusting that machines see truth when they only see signals? Imagine this. You walk through your neighborhood, you pass a smart lamppost that tracks foot traffic. You wave at a neighbor later that week. You receive a notice about your behavior, something suspicious. You are confused. You've done nothing, but the system interpreted your hand movement, your pause near a fence, your pace as something uncertain. You write to ask why. You receive an automated message. We're sorry. The system flagged your activity. There is no appeal. Think that's it. The machine made its call, okay? And there is no courtroom for misunderstood gestures in these errors. There is no villain, just a fog of assumptions, quietly coded, a haze of training data that carries all the old human biases, wrapped in silicon and given authority. Because the truth is, AI learns from us, and we are flawed. Our history is uneven, our judgments tangled, our decisions frequently unfair. So when machines learn from us, they don't become better, they become fast, efficient, and sometimes it's just as wrong. A hiring algorithm rejects every woman with a gap in her resume, was trained on past hires. And in the past, mothers were passed over. So now the machine does the same. Not out of malice, just habit, disguised as logic. No one notices until too late, until the bias has been automated, amplified, and scaled across thousands of decisions, and still no apology. It's just a patch. It's an update. Until next time, there is a soft kind of danger in this. Not loud, not catastrophic, but steady, because trust builds slowly and breaks quietly. And if the systems around you begin to misread you, label you, limit you without recourse, you may start to shrink, to adjust, to conform, to move a little less freely, to avoid being misread, to stay out of sight of the watchers, even the silent ones, especially them. What does it mean to live in a city where a machine can misunderstand your shadow and change your future? It means we must ask not only what AI can do, but what it should do, and how it will say sorry when it fails, because failure is not avoidable. It is inevitable, and justice should never be left to a system that cannot understand regret. So you keep walking. You remain seen, still mapped, still analyzed, but now a little more aware that not every pattern tells the whole story, and not every diction knows your path, and even the smartest machine can still get it wrong. Every system has an origin, every eye, a direction, every watcher, someone watching in return. Go, or so you hope. But in the quiet growth of artificial surveillance, this balance is tilting, okay? The watchers multiply, yet few ever turn their gaze inward. In the old world, watching required presence, guard in a booth, a pair of binoculars on a rooftop, passing police car, with windows rolled down and eyes scanning slowly. But today, presence is no longer necessary. Only access is, and once access is granted, watching becomes infinite. Cameras don't blink. Databases don't forget. Algorithms don't tire, but neither do they confess, or hesitate, or reflect. So the question lingers like a soft echo. Who watches? The watchers, when the watchers are not human. It begins with trust, not the deep trust between people, but the passive kind. The one that settles in when no one's asking questions. A camera appears on a lamppost, another at the crosswalk, then by the school, by the courthouse, by your front door. Each one justified. Each one explained public safety, traffic optimization, emergency response, vandalism prevention. And at first, you believe them. Why wouldn't? You have nothing to hide. But the watchers, they are not merely watching. They are collecting, learning, adapting. And not all of them work for someone you elected. A small town police department partners with a private tech company. The company provides software, smart surveillance, facial recognition, predictive alerts. The contract is signed quietly. No community meeting. No referendum. Okay? Just ink and approval. And now, the town's residents are being scanned. In grocery stores, in church parking lots, at Little League games. All stored. All processed. The town doesn't own the software. Okay? They don't even know what it learns. But the system watches on. Unseen by the very people it watches. At a corporate campus in a major city. Employees walk through security gates that now track more than ID badges. They measure heat signatures, pupil dilation, posture. Are you tired? Are you distracted? Okay? Are you loyal? The system tries to tell, not just for safety, but for productivity, for optimization. Yet no one tells you how those readings are interpreted, or how long they are stored, or who reviews the patterns they see in your face. You are told to trust the data, but the data is only ever a reflection, never the whole person. And in this expanding web of watchers and systems, of models and patterns, a deeper silence settles in. Who is responsible when a watcher fails, or when it doesn't? When it sees something it shouldn't have? There is no single answer, because there is no single watcher. The web is sprawling. The nodes are many.government, private enterprise, academic labs, security contractors, retail giants, startup accelerators, city councils, all building systems, all building watchers, and few watching each other. Long ago, the idea of checks and balances guided governance. A courtroom, a press, a public square. But code is not governed that way. It runs quietly, deep in data centers, hidden in legal footnotes, shielded by trade secrets. A town might not know that its traffic cameras are also feeding data into a national network, or that its face scanners were trained on photos scraped from the internet without consent. The watchers are many, but the watched are still mostly unaware. So you begin to wonder, can the watchers be watched? And if so, by whom? There are efforts, auditors, ethicists, watchdog organizations, some brave city councils voting for transparency in a world moving too fast to slow down. A few demand public databases, lists of where AI is used and how. Policies that mandate disclosures or restrict how surveillance can be combined. There are bills proposed. Some pass, some don't. But the systems grow faster than the laws that chase them. And even when rules exist, the enforcement is often voluntary. We follow best practices, the companies say. But best for whom? And who defines practice when lives are being predicted? Transparency becomes a currency valuable, canned, rarely spent. A city might release a transparency report that lists technologies in use, but the report uses vague terms: pattern, detection, incident review, AI, autonomous monitoring systems. What do those mean? How are they used? When do they activate? What does incident mean to a machine? The answers are blurred, not because they're hiding, but but because the systems themselves are not always understood, even by their creators. And when something goes wrong, the blame shifts quickly from the company to the contractor to the training data to the officer using the tool to the city official who signed the deal to the citizen who fit the pattern. Meanwhile, the system persists, rebranded, re-licensed, reinstalled in a new city with a different name, and the watchers continue to watch. You may wonder, could there be watchers that protect? AI systems designed not to monitor you, but to protect your rights. The idea is real. It's tools that audit AI, systems that check for bias, digital guardians that ask should we, instead of just can we. But they are few. It's often underfunded, often seen as obstacles rather than safeguards. It is not impossible, but it is inconvenient. And in a world moving at machine speed, inconvenience is often ignored. So what then? Must we give up our need for oversight? Must we simply accept that the watchers are now too vast to follow? No, but we must reframe the question. It's not just who watches, it's how they watch, why they watch, and what happens after they watch. Are the systems accountable? Are their decisions challengeable? Are there logs, redactions, disclosures? Can a person say, this isn't me, this is wrong, I want to be removed and be heard? Watch the watchers means more than suspicion. It means structure. It means care. It means a voice that speaks for the public within the machine. It means remembering that power requires pause. And call no matter how clean does not excuse a lack of ethics, because even the best technology can be misused. Even the most accurate watcher can be pointed in the wrong, direction. And if no one is watching where the watcher is looking, then we all risk becoming the observed without ever knowing why. In the end, perhaps the watcher is not just a camera or the algorithm or the drone. Perhaps the watcher is the citizen, the journalist, the teacher, the parent, the dreamer who asks the uncomfortable question in a quiet room. The one who says, I don't mind being seen, but I want to know by whom. And in that asking, a new balance is born, a new kind of sight, not just to monitor, to protect, not just to know, but to care, not just to build watches, but to build watchfulness. You stand at a crosswalk, the signal blinks, the light turns red, and somewhere in the wiring above, in the fiber beneath your shoes, a signal is sent, not just to change the light, but to log a presence, a time stop, a moment you never offered. You walked in the city, listened, even if you said nothing. This is the quiet contract you never signed. And now you wonder, can you ever opt out of something you never opted into? In the analog world, opting out was simple. You said no, she didn't join. You unplugged the phone. We left the room. But cities today are built on data. Not just cables and concrete, but listening, continuous, invisible, ambient listening. And when a system is built to hear everything, silence becomes suspicious. Absence becomes a signal of its own, to step away, to disconnect, to vanish. These are no longer passive acts. They are registered, noted, interpreted. A face not found in the system raises a flag. A phone left at home creates a blind spot. A cash purchase breaks the pattern. And so, ironically, to not be seen is now a kind of visibility. You might try to hide, turn off GPS, use a browser with no memory, wear a mask, avoid intersections with smart cameras, keep your eyes low. But even these choices become data. They say something about your intentions. They enter the model. They influence the prediction. The system adjusts, not out of malice, but because that is what it was designed to do, to learn, to respond, to make meaning from every corner of silence. Once, opting out meant withdrawal. Now it means resistance. And resistance, even if quiet, is often misunderstood by systems built to expect only participation. The smart city doesn't ask. It listens. It senses. It connects from transit cards to parking meters, from temperature sensors to facial recognition gates. The world around you is learning to observe without waiting for permission. So, what does opting out look like now? Is it even possible? And if not, what does it mean to live in a system that never turns away? For many, the answer is comfort. Surveillance is convenient. You tap a card and doors open. You ask a speaker and music plays. You walk past a store and receive a coupon for something you hadn't yet realized you needed. It feels tailored, smooth, seamless. And in this experience, something very old begins to fade. Friction. Friction used to remind us that we were making a choice, but convenience erodes choice by making it invisible. You might say, I don't mind being tracked. I have nothing to hide. But to opt out isn't always about hiding. Sometimes it's about breathing, choosing space, maintaining boundaries, not because of guilt, but because of dignity. And this, the system does not always understand. It knows patterns, not preferences. It knows signals, not silence. There are people who try to vanish, not fugitives, but thinkers, mothers, wanderers. People who simply want to walk without being measured. They leave phones behind. They avoid major intersections. They pay in cash. They speak less. They log off. But even absence, when tracked long enough, becomes a kind of fingerprint. It is the shape of your non-participation that becomes the data. And still, the world spins. On the sidewalk counts your footsteps. The train estimates your weight. The advertisement changes as you pass. You opted out, but the system stayed in. So is it hopeless? Is autonomy just an illusion in a world stitched together by sensors? Not entirely, but opting out today is not a switch. It is an art. It takes awareness. It takes intention. Takes community. Some cities offer opt-out forms. Can request that your license plate not be stored longer than necessary. You can ask that your public records not be shared with third parties. But these options are often buried deep within digital mazes, written in dense policy, draped in legal fog. Most people never find them, and even when they do, they wonder, was my data already seen? Was the file already made? Will this really delete it? They click submit. But the answer rarely arrives. Some communities build local networks of surveillance resistance. Groups of neighbors install camera blockers on public-facing lenses. Artists project light to confuse facial scanners. Activists publish maps of every known sensor in a 5-mile radius. Not to destroy, but to make visible what has become too invisible. Because to opt out, you must first see what you are in. And sometimes opting out is not a technical act. It is emotional, spiritual, symbolic. You take a walk and choose not to check your phone. You pause before posting your face again. You have a conversation with no recording, no metadata, no timestamp. Just voice, just eye contact, just presence. This, too, is a kind of resistance. This, too, is a declaration. I exist without being known. Opting out may not remove you from the system, but it can remind you that you are more than the data created in your shadow. You are not the model. You are not the heat map. You are not the category. You are the human beneath the pattern. And so, the quiet revolution begins not with fire, but with pause. Not with deletion, but with discretion. Not with erasure, but with awareness. Because opting out in a data-driven world is not an escape. It is a choice to hold space for what cannot be seen, to create a life measured not by clicks or pings or predictions, but by the moments you kept for yourself. The city doesn't sleep anymore. Not really. It's not in the way you remember. It rests, perhaps, but in that rest, it listens. A soft electrical hum beneath the sidewalks. Tiny pulses in the cables. Light sensors blinking softly above the rooftops. A quiet network of attention woven through every stoplight. Street lamp and smart trash bin. You used to look out the window and see skyline. Now you look and wonder what the skyline sees in return. Every city now has a second skin, not of steel or stone, but of signal, invisible but constant. Each car, a node. Each person, a point. It's a moment, a motion to be tracked and tucked away in some digital breath called the cloud. You walk through it without touching it, but it touches you. Inferred presence, assumed intent, estimated probability of where you'll turn next. There's nothing malevolent in the glow. No voice that hisses your name, just a hum of knowing. A rhythm of recognition, your life, softly converted into dots and lines. Dots for your location, lines for your motion, dots for your gaze, lines for your predicted pause. A mosaic of you, less like a portrait, more like a constellation. Not who you are, but where you tend to be. At first, it feels helpful. The bus arrives as you arrive. The coffee shop opens early on rainy days. The heater kicks on before you remember to ask for warmth. A city that anticipates, feels like care. But care without consent could start to resemble something else this new. Architecture of awareness is not built from blueprints. It evolves. Algorithms adjust. Sensors recalibrate. Feedback loops hum quietly in the background, like a tide that never withdraws. And as it grows, the map of the city changes. Not the roads, not the names, but the attention, where people gather, where they pause, where they linger longer than expected. The map of interest, the map of concern, the map of profit. You become a shape on someone else's dashboard in this future. You don't disappear when you sleep. Your home's thermostat learns your habits, your street lamp notes, your return time. Your doorbell recognizes your delivery. Driver down the sidewalk you walked at noon. It remembers. It updates your gate profile for later reference. And yet, the world feels the same. Birds still call in the morning. Leaves still scatter on the wind. Strangers still pass by without speaking. But now, the silence is filled with a soft, statistical hum. The world around you is learning you. Even when you forget yourself, you visit the park. You sit on a bench. Your phone stays in your pocket. You watch the sky, and above you, a camera adjusts its lens. Not because it's sinister, but because that's its job. It is programmed to focus, to identify, to adapt. And so, even in your quietest hour, there is a record. Time, location, activity. Low, anomaly, none. Your stillness was not still to the machine. Is this surveillance? Oh, is it stewardship? That's the question no one answers cleanly, because this isn't the future of control or collapse. It's the future of measurement. And when everything can be measured, everything becomes legible. And when everything is legible, choices are no longer just yours. They become predictions. The future is drawn in prediction now. Not just decisions made, but decisions inferred. A promotion offered because your typing speed increased. A loan denied because your walking path passed too close to a flagged address. A friendship suggested because you paused outside the same bookstore as someone else. Dots, lines, connections, all drawn before you knew you were asking. So, what happens to free will in a city that suggests everything? What happens to randomness when randomness is treated as error? What happens to you when your choices are always expected? You might feel this in small ways. The song that plays before you know you want to hear it. The ad that shows before you type. The search. It's a recommendation that turns into a habit you didn't choose but didn't resist. Not because it was wrong, but because it was easy. And ease can sometimes feel like comfort, even when it's eroding something deeper we used to make. Mistakes in public. Now, mistakes are flagged before they fully formed. An email left unsent because the tone was off. A route adjusted because traffic might form. Behavior nudged before it ever became a risk. You still live freely, but your freedom has shadows now. Soft algorithmic suggestions that look like wisdom until you forget how to think without. Damn, but this isn't a warning. It's a meditation. Because the future is not only what the systems make of you, it's what you make of them. You can learn to see the lines. You can trace them. You can redraw them. You can walk a different path just to confuse the map. You can pause where you're not expected. You can choose a different rhythm than the one predicted for you. And in doing so, you remind the world that it still holds surprises, that you, even as a dot, are not yet defined. Some technologists speak of this age as a dawn, a moment where the city wakes up. But maybe the city was always awake. It just didn't know your name. Now it does. Now it knows your preferences, your commute, your weekly patterns, your late night searches. Now it draws a future with you in it. The question is, whose pen is holding the line? You are more than your profile, more than your metadata, more than your browser history, your spending habits, your sensor-triggered movements. You are not just predictable. You are possible, and possibility can still redraw any map. So step lightly, not in fear, but in awareness. Let your presence be felt, but not defined. Let your quiet decisions resist the noise of overfitting models. And if the city remembers everything, let it remember too, that you once sat beneath a quiet street lamp and simply breathed.